Alexandra Boyd, welcome to Tech Talk with Daniel Albu.
Well, thank you. Very happy to be here.
You know, it's amazing to have you here. Monkey Island fans like myself know you as the voice of Elaine Marley in select Monkey Island titles. On the other hand, Titaniacs like myself know you from your memorable role as first-class woman in Titanic, and more recently from the Ship of Dreams documentary and your Titanic Talk podcast. So in a way, you can consider this whole thing a Tech Talk and Titanic Talk crossover episode.
And I was going to say, you know, you do have to remember that I have been doing this a very long time. And so there's various different avenues and places that I have put my, shall we say, creativity. And it's really fun to have a sort of resurgence of interest in both Monkey Island and Titanic, because I don't think when I did either of those two jobs in the 90s, I expected to still be talking about them this far into the future or the now. So here we are.
Well, most of my guests on this channel don't expect to talk about their games from the 80s and 90s in 2024.
No, but you were all very young when you started playing it. And over the years, I have been approached by young men and then men in their 30s and then men in their 40s who, once they realize who I am, they're like, oh my gosh, you're Elaine Marley. I've known who you were since I was 9 years old. And that's always a kind of weird treat. Yeah.
But before we board the Titanic to make our way to Monkey Island, let's start at the beginning. How did you get into acting?
Oh my goodness. I can't remember a time when I didn't want to be an actress. That was, you know, I was at a school that wasn't particularly theater or arts orientated. You know, nowadays you can do drama A-level at high school. You can diversify or specify very soon, but I had to wait. And I wasn't particularly academic, and it was quite an academic school. But what I did do was audition for a theatre school called Lane Theatre Arts in Epsom, which is just south of London. And I got a place there, which was a 3-year theatre school. So it was very heavily a dance program with singing and acting. And a lot of those students, or most of those students, get funneled into West End, Broadway type shows. And also become ballet or modern dance teachers who qualified to teach. And so I did that, but I kind of didn't really want to be a dancer. I really, the little bit of drama I got was where I kept leaning in. So in my mid-20s, I went to drama school, which I loved. I loved it. And the remit at the end of that course was to start a theatre company. So I co-founded a theatre company with 6 other actors and a director who'd been on the directing course. And we did the Edinburgh Festival, and we did, London Fringe. We did Shakespeare, and we devised things, and it was fantastic. It was fantastic, and it's a great way to sort of cut your teeth in the industry, especially as I was sewing the costumes, and we were making the sets, and we would, we go to the Edinburgh Festival and get a big hall and create the theatre space in this, church hall and so forth. A lot of work and no money, but you do it because you're, 25 and this is, what you were born to do. So that's how I started, really. But the one sort of spanner in the works may have been that I fell in love with and married a pilot in the American Air Force who was stationed in the UK. And his job took us to the panhandle of Florida. And I was stuck there for 3 years. No acting work. I think I was waiting tables. I was sort of doing all the day jobs that actors do, but no acting work to look for, so to speak. And that was a slightly sad time in my life. And when the marriage was no longer viable, she uses a euphemism, I got in a car with my cat. I was in Florida, and I drove all the way across the United States to Seattle, which had a ton of theater. So I started auditioning and living and working in Seattle, and then 10 years in Los Angeles, which was partly how I came to get cast in James Cameron's Titanic. And then I went back to London for a bit, and I decided I wanted to direct. That was another long process. We can go into that. And then I came back just as they were closing the borders as the pandemic hit us. So I've been back here for 4 and a bit years.
Okay, so we covered everything. Thank you, Alexandra.
That's a very short version of a very long life, just so you know. And Monkey Island is in there somewhere, so we can go back and delve.
Do you remember the first role you were credited on?
It was probably the Burston Rebellion, a television thing with, guess who? Bernard Hill, who played the captain in Titanic. He played a teacher with now Dame Eileen Atkins. They were a married couple in the show. It's a BBC dramatization. And they were 2 teachers, and they were going to close the school, so the children all went on strike. This was like in 1910 or something. But actually, there might have been one before that. I played Anna Sewell as a little girl when I was 15 in a very small BBC dramatization about Anna Sewell, who wrote Black Beauty, which was a beautiful sort of children's novel about the life of a horse and how badly they were treated during the Victorian times. And the point of view of the horse is shown all the way through. So young girls of my age just, ate up stories like that with a spoon, ponies and horses, And then I got to play her as a young girl. So it would have been that. And then it would have been Burston Rebellion. I think there were a couple of sort of small roles. But really, that was before I went to drama school, way before.
In what year was that?
1975 or 6.
Do you remember the first TV series you were credited on?
TV series, Boone. Like I said, I did like a couple of. You're testing my IMDb now, and I don't have it in front of me. Do you have my IMDb there?
No.
No.
I got it memorized.
TV series. No, I think it was Boone. But again, they were just, their job. When you're a jobbing actor, when you're just sort of, you're starting out or you're just looking to get work, those sort of, in Los Angeles, they call them day players, or guest star roles. They're just small parts.
Okay, fair enough. In 1989, James Cameron, The Abyss was released to theaters. Did you watch it when it first came out?
No, I didn't. But I remember seeing it for the first time at the Seattle International Film Festival because they released his director's cut. So I went to see I saw the director's cut first. I don't know how I'd respond to the original cut because Jim likes his director's cuts. He likes having a go himself, Now his cut is the director's cut because he has so much control. But I just was blown away by it. I just love and I just watched it again recently for the first time in a long time. And you see so many nods to what's coming, even in Titanic, with the doors closing, when the emergency happens. There's this silly sort of subplot of the crazy Marine with the nuclear bomb, which gets dispensed with quite quickly because then he has to go down into the abyss and what's the word? What do you do when you take a bomb apart? He just has to deactivate it. And the tension and the thriller and, it's like when you watch Titanic, what the end is going to be. But when the story is told well enough, you can watch it over and over and over again, even knowing what the end is, and still experience that thrill or that anxiety or that rush when the ship finally is raised and all the water's falling off it and we didn't have to decompress. What happened? All of the issues, the points that they bring up during the film. I just got chills just thinking about it. I do remember thinking, oh, they kind of ran out of money and they kind of finished it a bit too quickly. But it doesn't matter because the journey is what takes you along on everything. And so many nods and so many setups. Like when Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth Master Antonio, they're like this troubled couple and they're going through a divorce, and he gets so angry he throws his wedding ring into the toilet, and then he remembers for some reason he changes his mind and he reaches in to the blue chemical toilet. So for the rest of the movie, he has a blue hand. I just love it. And he puts the ring back on, and that ring gets jammed in the door, which saves his life. You know, the metaphors are fantastic. And you see a lot of it. It's all foreshadowing for what it's like, his dress rehearsal for films like Titanic, I think, my humble opinion as now a filmmaker, and how you craft scripts and stories and little bits come to you. Oh, wow. Yeah. Or you put down the script for a week or 2 or 6 months, and then you come back and you have a whole new perspective on it and a new idea. When people say, gosh, it took me 10 years to write this script, you're not writing it 40 hours a week. You're writing it over, writing isn't constantly tapping away at a computer. It's developing the ideas and the characters and the dialogue. And you can go back and you can say, I can get so much across in this scene with 3 lines instead of 12. And you couldn't see it when you wrote it, but you go back and you're like, oh, I can do it now. And the audience will stay along with you. It's when you chit chat too much, they're ahead of you, you know.
And the actors were so invested in the movie that even the cinematographer, or actually James Cameron, instead of yelling cut when the camera lens was filled with water, the cinematographer just wiped the lens and the scene kept on going.
Yeah. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And we got to, on Titanic Talk, we got to interview Van Ling, who was very young at that point. And he had made himself known to Jim. If you listen to our podcast, you can hear his fantastic story about meeting Gaylan Hurd and James Cameron. And then he became Jim's right-hand man. He did all the research for those underwater breathing helmets and all of, what happens to the body when it's like really, really deep under the ocean. And he got Jim his first computer. Jim was like, can you get me one of those and set it all up for me and show me how to use it? And Van's like, sure, yeah. So he's sort of been this invaluable consultant all the way through. And then, of course, when they needed a bit of diversity in Titanic, he ended up being one of the Chinese sailors who survived the Titanic, actually.
I listened to that episode yesterday on my way to work.
It's fascinating. We could have spoken to him for another hour. He is so full of stories. And I wanted to delve into that because, again, now that I'm a filmmaker, I'm always fascinated by the behind the scenes and how that was executed, how that, best idea wins, or this is going to be impossible, or you're going to kill somebody. Okay, so what can we do then? How can we accomplish it? And those are the moments on set that I really value. Not no, can't do that. I've had that as well. No. Okay, don't know me. Just say, probably not, but how about this? And let me tell you, as a woman on my own set, I have been pushed back many times, and I've had to go, okay, what can we do then? Because we're doing something. We're not just going to abandon this shot or this moment or this scene. So how are we going to do it?
I looked up his contact details yesterday. I want to get him for a conversation on my channel.
For Van?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. You must. Yeah. And he's very open. He's very open to talking about it because he's like, he loves what he does. He loves to share what he does. And in fact, I introduced him over email to my Van. His name is Mike Mishko. I call him my digital Swiss Army knife because I am not a technical. I said to you, what do you mean tech talk? I can't contribute anything to a tech. I'm the least technical person you could meet, but I don't need to be technical because I've got Mikey, who's my editor, who's my VFX guy, who's been on set with me, who's been, we can force a perspective. We can put a model there. I can paint it in, or I can do such and such. And that's what Van was to Jim. So I'm like, you two have to meet. And Mikey immediately responded with, in the email, he said, I was at high school and I heard that this young guy had made a powerlifter Halloween costume and taken it to Lightstorm. And that's how he met James Cameron. And I thought I was from a, northern town in England. Nobody I knew was a filmmaker. I thought it was such a really hard industry to crack into. He said, but we turned our high school common room into an alien's landscape, and even made one of the, the
face huggers.
The face hugger, thank you. And he said we pissed off all the teachers except one art teacher who thought it was the most brilliant piece of imagination. But he was inspired by that story. And now here we are, 25 years later, I get to interview Van. I go, Van, I think you should meet Mikey. And Mikey, it's like this full circle thing that, I got very excited, and so did Mikey, that they got connected. Yeah. And
interestingly enough, The Abyss stayed your favorite James Cameron film, even though you starred in Titanic.
Yes. I think when I first saw Titanic, when I saw the trailer for Titanic, now you have to remember that when we were making that film, we were blown away by the ship, the 90% replica on the beach. You could see it from the road. It was amazing to walk down into the set, which was this 3-story construction in a tank that they told us they were going to fill full of water and then tip on hydraulics. That all sounded amazing. You don't really have any concept of what that means, right? Because you're there in your costume and you're being told to go here and do that and whatever. So by the time the trailer came out and I saw the back of the ship go up like that and the propellers and the little lifeboat in the foreground, I was like, oh my God, I had no idea. And then we all were invited to the cast and crew screening. There were so many of us, we had to be put into 2 large cinemas side by side in Century City in Los Angeles. We all watched it. None of us, and then I could see all the people I'd gotten to know, but had never been in a scene with them. Oh, there's Johan's scene. Oh, there's Linda's scene. Oh, there's Rochelle. And then we got to have a bit of a party, as you do, a sort of, cast and crew party. We had no idea. And this was before it was in cinemas. It was like a week before they released it and premiered it. We still had no idea. No idea. But I will say, I think like young people who saw Titanic when they were 6 or 11 or 14 or whatever, I was young enough and I was an impressionable enough baby, didn't know yet filmmaker, that The Abyss did for me very similar things to what Titanic did for young people. And then I can go a step further because I'm writing a book. I'm in the process of writing a book proposal. I can go back further and say that a film called Out of Africa is my Titanic. I've watched it over and over and over again. I ugly cry at the end every time. I cannot wait for that moment when she hears, spoiler alert, when she hears that Dennis Finch Hatton has killed himself in his airplane. And she looks at her ex-husband and she goes, why did you come and tell me? And he said, I felt it should be me. She goes, my God, you're brave. Oh, there's so many moments in it that I can quote to you when she stands at the train station and she's going back home and her servant, who's been her housekeeper for the whole time she's been in Africa, he wants to come with her. And she's like, no, where I'm going, you wouldn't like it. And she goes, just say my name one time. And he goes, your name is Gadden. Gadden, your name is Gadden. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's just, and again, it's based on a true story about true lives, overcoming great hardship. You overcome one hardship and boom, here comes another one. And boom, here comes another one. And you're invested in how that character lives through and how she changes and how she starts out and what she becomes by the end of the film. And that's what you do with Rose. I was going to say Dawson. Rose DeWitt-Bukater. You see her as one person, and you see her over the course of the sinking of a ship, her completely change her outlook and her choices that she's going to make when after the credits roll. And I worked that out. It's like, I can quote Out of Africa like Titaniacs can quote Titanic, which I can now quote now too, because, you know, it's a part of my life. I'm a tiny part of it, but it's become a huge part of my life.
You know, we're going to talk about Titanic. I wanted to show you my collector's edition of Titanic.
Oh,
with a VHS tape.
Oh.
I'm going to unbox it in a sec.
Don't let Titanic 97 see that. He'll have that off you in a second.
In 1995, you played Sarah Olmsted in Mr. Holland's Opus. What can you share about the production of that movie?
Well, that is, I would say, officially my first experience of a Hollywood movie. I had been, I'd been in a couple of plays in Sun Valley, Idaho, where Richard Dreyfuss has a home, and his children actually ended up going to school there and growing up in Sun Valley, which is this beautiful mountainous ski resort in the winter and sort of hiking and biking. A lot of celebrities have homes there. Arnold Schwarzenegger did. Ernest Hemingway lived there and died there, I believe. And, you know, Bruce Willis and Demi Moore. There was a sort of enclave of celebrity ski people since the golden age of Hollywood. It'd been there quite well established. So I did this play called A Child's Christmas in Wales by Dylan Thomas with Richard. It's a story. It's a Christmas story. And he read it as if he was Dylan Thomas. And all of us, the company members, ran around acting out all the characters. If people know Under Milk Wood, it's a very similar sort of story. And Richard came in like 2 days before we were supposed to open, and he was doing this dreadful sort of Shakespearean-y, Welshish sort of, I don't know what was going on. But, you know, he was doing his own thing, and he'd heard me speak, and he was like, Victoria? And I looked at him and I said, do you mean me, Richard? My name's Alexandra. That's a big mistake. People think my name's Elizabeth or Victoria or Alexandra. It's one of those English queens. They get there eventually. So he said, how do I say this one line here? I said, well, it's years and years and years ago when there were wolves in Wales. We need to get together. Can we? And we sat down, and I reached into my not very distant past drama training about rhyme and assonance. And when you're speaking prose, but prose poetry, like Child's Christmas in Wales is, you use all of that. And then you kind of start taking on Anthony Hopkins or, you know, Dylan Thomas, the Welshness of it. And he got it. He just needed somebody to nudge him back into that place, you know. So I was really proud of myself. Like, oh, you know, the director was a bit pissed off at me because I think he had thought he was going to direct the Oscar-winning actor, but actually Richard chose me just by the fact that I'm English and I'm good at accents. And then he was like, so you live in Seattle? I was living in Seattle at the time. We're doing a movie in Portland this summer. I was like, oh, really? So I had an agent, and I was like, I think there's a Richard Dreyfuss movie coming through Portland, and there was. And I auditioned. There was a football coach. I auditioned for his wife, or a girlfriend of his, and then in the end, they gave me the English teacher. and I got to be English drama teacher. And I got to experience my very first movie. And I just thought it was, I thought, this is it. I'm not going back to the theater, making $35,000 a year if I'm lucky. I need to be in Los Angeles pursuing this experience. I remember at one point we were all ready to go to set because it spans over 30 years. So you'd have to have, I was like, how old was I? Like 32 or 34. And they had to put all this age makeup on me because I was supposed to be 50. And we were, they use surgical, I'm going to call it surgical glue, but it's like a rubber solution glue that they paint on your face, and it's white, but when it dries, it goes clear, but it gives you all these wrinkles. And we're sitting there waiting to go to set, and Richard's like, how's it going, Alexandra? You having a good time? I said, oh my God, I'm having the time of my life. And I started weeping with joy, and all of this stuff getting wet was making little tracks, And he's like, he was very kind. He said, what you're saying is valid. In other words, I think he missed the joy of first experiences. He'd been acting in films for probably 30 years. It was a bit more of a money deal for him than actually something he could enjoy. And I really, it changed my life because I packed up my cat and a U-Haul and everything I owned, and I trundled down the I-5 to Los Angeles and stayed there for 10 years.
And, still in the 90s. Still in the 90s.
But that is when I got the first Monkey Island gig, because I'm good at accents. Even though I use my own voice in Monkey Island, I probably went in and auditioned with an American accent. And then when you chat, they're like, well, why don't you just be English? Why not? And that's the great thing about film, television, games, is it's not Shakespeare. It's not Bernard Shaw. It's not, you can, it's more malleable, and you can fit into what you bring to the table, maybe in a strong. Ironically, when I moved back to London, I ended up playing American roles because I had lived here so long. I was really good at an American accent, but that's another story.
Anyway, in 1996, as I was watching Party of Five, apparently you played Miss Esser in season 2 of that show.
I did.
So
tiny part. Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. Like guest star roles. They're like, you make, I don't know what a day rate for a guest star role is now on television, but you do that, and then you get tiny little residual checks, like 5 cents or 50 cents every time it's shown in Germany or somewhere. That it's kind of hard to explain, and I think I tried to do it a bit in Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries. I wanted to give a voice to those of us who are not famous actors, who never get asked about our day-to-day, our jobs. The job of acting, 90% of it is auditioning, learning lines that you will never perform because you never got the job, researching a part that you will never be given, imagining yourself walking in the shoes of a character that you will never play in front of an audience beyond the casting director. And I think a lot of actors miss that. They think that the job is everything. The job is there's some ridiculous statistic that only 3% of Screen Actors Guild members are in work at any one time. That's a very small amount of people in any one union, because in most unions, everybody's working and trying to hold on to their job, But actors, I remember somebody saying it to me, Alexandra, you're in the top 3% right now because you're working. And there are a lot of people who say they're actors, and they're not really.
When is one considered an actor? When he's in a role And, a year after that role, or 2 years after that role, or 10 years after that role?
I think this is not really answering the question, but I think another mistake, especially in Los Angeles, that actors make is that acting is they are actors. This is what I do. This is what I'm doing. I'm pursuing it. I'm going to class. I'm going to auditions. They don't do anything else. So they have no other outlet for their creativity. And I look back and maybe I should have been a bit more like that. And I might have got a bit more work, but I also loved interior design. So I went to UCLA and I studied color theory and how you build a house and electrical systems and lighting. And I thought it was going to be cushion covers, fabric. No, none of that. It was a very intense, full on sub-architectural course. I don't know what I mean by that, but we learned a lot about buildings and culture and history, art history, to do with design, and not just the places we live, but anything. Everything is design. Somebody designed this pattern on this unbreakable drinking vessel, and the color. So, it's going to be something that can fall on the floor and not break, but we want to make it look attractive. Or, I'm going to pick an organic sort of, and then I'm going to make this color, and it's kind of look like glass, but it's not. It's somebody's job was that job, and it's everywhere. Everything we touch, everything is designed. Everything has a purpose or no purpose, and it's all been touched by design.
So in your opinion, an actor needs to have at least one other title, either writer, director?
I think that's becoming more common now. But again, when I was in drama school, the most that was expected from us was to start a theatre company and do already written plays. We were not encouraged to write our own monologues. We were certainly not encouraged to make our own films because we didn't have a camera in our hands. I'm still astonished when I talk to young people who want to get into the film industry. How do I get started? It's like, start filming things with your friends. God, do I wish I had that opportunity as a 15, 16. I know I'd have been directing in my 20s, but I had to wait until I was in my 50s. Because
same thing with photographers. You had to develop a film, and piece of film would cost money. And then you'd have to wait for it to develop. But nowadays, you can just take multiple pictures and then whichever ones work, keep them, sell them, whatever. The other ones, just delete them.
You don't need a space, a dark room, nothing. You don't need to find an editor who can literally cut and paste your film together. You can do it on your computer, laptop. And, born too early. I would have loved that opportunity. And now, even in my 30s in Los Angeles, my partner at the time was a director, and he loved cameras and lenses and focus points. And I was like, oh, I can't possibly. And then it transitioned to digital. And now my eyes roll back in my head at the technicality of cameras. But I have a cinematographer who loves light, who understands that he might not be a script writer or a director, but he loves taking my script and my scene that has a specific description of whatever, and then he gets to light it and capture it and show me the frame and the picture. Here we go, collaborating. I don't have to know all that technical stuff because my job is the story and the tone and the visual and the colors. And as we spoke about before, the sound and the music and all the elements, that's my job. That I give the execution of those elements that I don't have this. I've been to a point with Mikey, my digital Swiss Army knife. I'm like, how long will it take me to compose the music on GarageBand for the movie? Oh, well, you could, have I said, because I need to, I'm singing it to the composer. I'm like, this is what I want it to sound like. But it's ridiculous. I'm not going to start composing my own music for my movies. But, you know, there's access to it. There's access. But I like the collaboration as well, you see. I like Charlie Mackey, who's the composer on Ship of Dreams, was in a master's program at a film school in London. She composed all of the music for Ship of Dreams, which is exquisite. She's a huge James Horner fan, who inspired her to become a composer in the first place. She's the daughter of a friend of mine I went to college with, to the theatre college I was telling you about. She's her daughter. Oh, Katie is her mum, my friend. Charlie, I've known her since she was like 15, 16, 17, you know, composing. Yes, keep going. And then, full disclosure, I went back to a composer that I had not been able to work with, but I had met years ago. He was no longer composing. I was like, right, Charlie, you're on. And she did the most extraordinary job. I could never have. She plays the flute. She's got the piano. She's obviously got all the digital versions of the orchestra. We didn't have to pay for an orchestra because she had the skill to orchestrate and make it sound like a James Horner score. And then she wrote an Irish jig for the Irish Jig third class dance party stories that come out. Amazing.
Still in 1996. Which was the year in which you were in Party of Five. You joined the cast of Titanic and were on set in October and November, if I'm not mistaken, of that year.
Yes.
Now, given that Titanic was such a large-scale production and probably your first big budget film, what was your favorite piece of movie magic that you witnessed for the first time on set?
I love a Steadicam. And I had experienced the Steadicam on Mr. Holland's Opus in that final scene in the auditorium. They had followed Richard down the aisle, up on the risers and onto the stage. I remember going, that is really clever. And going to set with the Steadicam operator, tapping him on the shoulder, going, really love watching you do that. He's like, oh, thanks a lot. Thanks, you're welcome. On first class dining room, on set, I've come down the grand staircase. I've raised my eyebrow at Jack. And now I'm being sat at the captain's table by Bernard Hill. And behind me, they have set up, they're following Jack and Rose and Molly Brown to the main table, where that big table dining room scene happens. There was a moment that sticks out in my mind where, now bear in mind, this set is 360 degrees. It's, you know, we are in the first class dining room. For all intents and purposes, first class dining room, 1912 Titanic. Everybody has cleared the set except we can look him up. His name is Jim something.
Jim Moreau.
Is yes. Oh my gosh, you're so brilliant. Jim Moreau. He's in his cargo pants and t-shirt and his cable wrangler. And I just did as they were about to go, I looked around and all I saw were first class passengers, 1912 Titanic, except for Jim and the wrangler going doody 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 doody. They were like, it was so incongruous. And I remember thinking, oh God, movies are amazing. And going back to Mr. Holland's Opus as well, there was it wasn't a Steadicam shot. It was like a crane shot over us in the audience, and it followed Richard up onto the stage. But he kept leaving little dusty footprints on the steps as he stepped up. And I saw the prop guy watch the camera. He'd watch guessing that the steps were out of shot. He'd go there with a duster, dust the footprints, and then reverse and come out of shot when the camera came back again. And I was like, that's amazing. Did you notice me doing that? Did you notice me doing my job, basically? And I'm fascinated at the way films are made. I love the language that we use. Like most industries have a specific shorthand, vernacular, patois that they use. And all of that it's very exciting to be. And when I got to be on my own movie set for the first time, it's pretty good. You do have that moment that all first time directors have, which is, okay, there's a generator there, there's a grip truck there with the camera, 250,000 quid's worth of camera in it, and here's the location. Oh my God, actors are in hair and makeup, and they're setting up a monitor for me so I can watch what's going on. Nobody would be here at all if it wasn't for me. If I hadn't had this idea and written it down and raised the money and cast it's mind-boggling. And then you just stop doing that and then you just get on with it. But there is always that moment of everyone is here because of you.
Isn't it stressful to think that everyone's here because of you?
Yes, it's very stressful. It's beyond stressful. But I think the build up to it, especially in independent films, at the level that I work, it takes so long that you do get eased into it. You're not dropped into it. You've had many, many meetings. You've hired every single person who's there. You've, your script inside out because you've written it and rewritten it and cut it and added to it. And, yes, it is. It's more what I call the ticking time bomb. The minute you step onto set, say the call is 8 a.m., and now you have to wait for them to set up the camera and the thing. And that takes a good hour at least. But all the time you see the money just burning and evaporating in front of your eyes. And if you don't, you've got all these shots on the call sheet, and the stress is, what if I don't? What if I miss one? What if we don't have time to slot it into tomorrow? And, we don't have James Cameron's budget to just go, we'll just pop inside if it rains and shoot the interiors. And then, no, it is, and I will go 2 or 3 takes. You have really good actors and you're like, good. And the first AD's like, no, we need to turn around. No, I just want a 3 shot, just 1 3 shot. I don't need cover. You will, Alexandra, you will, with this battle of I'm trying to move on and get everything under our belt. And they're going, again, to my inexperience, sometimes you're going to want to come around and cut away. Okay, we're just this once. But then can we move on? That's the stress. I don't want to end up in the edit and have a big hole somewhere that I can't fill. You
can always do a fade out, fade into the next scene,
like in the 90s. Yeah, and my friend, my producer and I met. Bryan Cranston's a good friend of mine. I played his wife in a silly independent film about 25 years ago, and we were having tea with him at the BAFTA headquarters in London. And he goes, so how's it going? Oh, we wrapped, we've done it. Yeah, you can do any reshoots? And we were like both, no, there's no reshoots. We have what we've got. This is it. And we know Widow's Walk is the film I'm talking about. It's a ghost story. And you can find it, Google it. You can find it. It's on YouTube, I think, with adverts, but really proud of it. What one is able to achieve with a micro budget and lots of passion. But you don't want to do it too many times because it's way too stressful. That's where I'm at. I'm like, people go, oh, look what you did. It looks like you spent, if you told me that sequence underwater cost you £1 million, I would believe you. It's so amazing. It's beautiful. No, it didn't cost that much. It just looks like it did. Well, then you can do it again. How about you do it again? No. How about you give me a proper budget and I'll show you what I can do.
But that's the problem. When you try to do something on a budget and you do it well, then people think that you can do it over and over again on the same tiny budget. So, you can win.
Yes. Or you have to start learning to say no, which is hard. It's hard.
Now, you've mentioned that, wearing the period costumes on an actual set made it easier for you to get into character, apart from Jim Moreau, who ruined everything because he was the Steadicam operator.
Yeah.
Now, given that Titanic came out when CGI was still used sparingly and only when absolutely necessary, do you think it would be harder today as an actress to get into character with, with modern filmmaking techniques where there'll likely be fewer props or actual sets and everything would be in front of a green screen?
Yes, and you hear actors talk about it all the time. You hear about, they have to use a lot of their imagination. The thing is that if you're talking about something like Game of Thrones, where you've got dragons flying in and out, or Lord of the Rings, where you can't build that stuff, you just can't build it. They build a lot of sets, a lot of models, and scale it up and that sort of thing. And example, there's a deleted scene that I'm in Titanic, which is a corridor, and very cleverly they put a backdrop. So the corridor is not as long as it looks. So there's a painted backdrop. Ismay comes running down the corridor, but it looks like the corridor goes on for another 100 feet, but it was actually only 40 feet of set. Right. So there's movie magic. Like you would do the same thing on a theater set. You just, let the perspective do your trick, the eye. What we keep coming back to in my documentary, and what we've talked about a lot in my podcast, is that they just don't spend that kind of money. They don't go to those lengths anymore. I just think that if it's an interior of a house, you either have the real house as a Victorian house or an Edwardian house. You don't have Titanic. You just build a certain amount of it and you keep it very close. You don't have this vast expanse of an entire first-class dining room or the poop deck. It doesn't really tilt. You can fake it with CGI, but you can't fake the people in the same way, I don't think. You can't. Like if you think about when the ship is really sinking, and I'm thinking when Father Biles is reciting from the Bible, when everyone's clinging on to him, and James Lancaster, that actor, talks about it in detail in our podcast. He says, I'm really clinging onto that cleat. I'm really holding actors. They forced it a little bit, but because they really had tipped the poop deck, he was clinging on for dear life. And of course it informs the performance, the costumes, the set, the everything. And then, there was a significant amount of green screen done, like that, the flying scene with Kate and Leo, they did some of it at sunset on the replica, but they, the 360 whatever, or the 180 shot, that's a green screen. It's just been beautifully sewn together, so you can't see the joins. It's just mocap and green screen and all of that stuff. Imagine Avatar. Can you imagine doing Avatar? What a grueling job. When you're Sigourney Weaver playing a 14-year-old, you just have to hope that what you're doing is going to show up on the day, because you have no idea what you look like or what the surroundings are going to look like. It might show you a little computer screen maybe. But, they keep thinking they can dispense with actors. You can't. I hope you can't. What's your opinion on that?
I honestly don't think that you can do that, at least not at the moment, especially given the fact that, we still have the uncanny valley effect that is very prominent in every AI video out there, where you can notice that it's not human. We have the same effect with CGI work in general. When you de-age a person, even though there was an actual person on set and the de-aging process only removed the wrinkles and, made him or her look younger, it still doesn't look human, and it takes you out of the movie.
But you also have to start with the human. You have to start with the human. Like if you're Harrison Ford, you can't just take Harrison Ford's 50, 60-year career. You have to start with him in his 70s and to know, and de-age him, unless you're just going to make a computer game with mocap. It's as lifelike as it's becoming, and more, it's still, you're in a different world. You're having a different experience. It's not like watching a movie. It's like playing a computer game.
Exactly. So, for example, even though in the intro of Dial of Destiny, the latest Indiana Jones movie, they de-aged him and used deepfake from all of his previous movies, from Star Wars, his Han Solo, and from Indiana Jones, to de-age him and make it look real and believable. It's not. And it took me out of the entire experience. That scene was amazing in general, the action scene itself, but it doesn't look like Harrison Ford. It looks like I'm watching a CGI character do amazing things. And even if Harrison Ford himself was on set doing these things, which I doubt it, probably used a stunt double, it just doesn't look real.
But but I think I have this problem too. You're too deep in knowing what the process is. For the average cinema goer or fan of the Indiana Jones series, they're going to just think it's great. And they're not going to look for the joins, and they're just going to enjoy it. I have completely lost the ability to enjoy almost every film properly on face value. I'm even like, oh, look at that lamp. I love that bedside lamp. That's what I get there. And I'll be like, where's she going now? And Drew will be like, she just said where she's going. She just said, because I'm looking at the lamp. Because I'm looking at set decoration. I'm looking at the accent is being done. That shot, how did that shot happen? We're ruined. It's ruined. You'll never enjoy a piece of movie, television, theater, even in the same way somebody, it's a little bit like, Richard Dreyfuss asking me how I was doing on my first movie set, and me going, it's so great. And what you're feeling is valid. He remembered that feeling. And, whether it was on American Graffiti or whatever, that feeling is gone because we know too much.
Yeah, we know how the sausage is made.
Yes, and you don't want to know how a sausage is made.
The problem with shots nowadays is that everything can be explained by CGI or AI or deepfake. How did they do that shot? They probably use CGI. But that's why movies from the 90s, the 80s, the 70s are so great, because you're trying to reconstruct the way they did that shot. So they use practical effects and camera tricks and all of the other trickery that was available at the time that is much more impressive than just using CGI, which is
yes.
the solution to everything.
I'm not interested in the Marvel films or any of that stuff. I've never watched any of them all the way through. Again, if you look at my first favorite, my Titanic is out of Africa, and that's where I lean into. I don't need to be entertained in that way. I remember as a little girl not liking James Bond. I was like, he'd fall off that train. That would never happen. A human can't do that, leap off that cliff and survive by jumping into the water. It's stupid. It's too far-fetched. Stupid car chases. Just have never liked them. And that was back in the day when they were practically shooting James Bond, right?
With rear projection.
Right. But yes, exactly. Yeah. Cary Grant with the airplane. I'm just not interested in that kind of story. But that's what's so marvelous about the movies, is that we can tell all sorts of stories and pick our favorite ones.
So when you watch a movie, you don't have any suspension of disbelief. You just think to yourself, that's not possible.
Well, if it's a stupid car chase or something, and the car chases always go on for too long, and then I'm like, how much did it cost to lock down the streets of New York and have these, and then they do that ramp where it goes, and I'm like, oh, please. It's just boys and toys. Women, female directors, look at the choices that female directors, generally speaking, are making. The kind of stories that we are now being allowed to make. That yes, I'm not going to remember her name. It's going to be terrible. The lady who directed Wonder Woman. She got to, but it still had this thread of a female story with action and flying and twiddling and jumping and, all that kind of stuff. But even then, that final sequence when she's saving the world from the First World War, I'm like, ugh, okay, I'm done now. But that had to stay in there because those are the tropes that you use in those big superhero movies. You had to see her leaping across the trenches and daring do and doing down the baddies, the bad people, the naughty people.
And saving the day.
Saving the day. Yeah.
Since you were on set in October and November of 1996, then you probably were on set on October 27th, 1996, which was the premiere of Romeo and Juliet, which took place in Hollywood. And according to your documentary, one of the dancers had to step in for Leonardo that day during the dance scene. And he talked about it in length.
Yes.
Did this premiere or the popularity of Romeo and Juliet in general affect the production of Titanic in any way? Apart from the dance scene?
Yeah, no, not to my I didn't notice that. People were very focused on the job at hand. And what happens a lot is an actor will have made a film, I don't know, a year earlier, 18 months earlier, and then they might have done another couple of films in between, and now they're working on this film. And then they, part of their contract will be, I've got to go and be at the premiere or do a junket or do several junkets every time the movie. So, on these bigger productions, they have to weave that actor's commitments into their schedule. I do remember on one of my breaks seeing the film Jude that Kate Winslet had done with Christopher Eccleston. And Jude the Obscure is one of my favorite Thomas Hardy movies. Oh my God, novels. And I had seen this. It's so moving, and I sort of collared her in the corridor. I was like, Kate, I just saw Jude. It was just so much. Oh, was it okay? Was it okay? I was like, yes, it was fun. Oh my gosh, heart-wrenching. So I was more affected by that. But again, she had done that whenever. She wasn't thinking about that movie there and then. She was reminded of it by me having seen it. She was immersed in Titanic. So it's very hard to keep switching back and forth, I think, but that's the job, that's the job. And I think, it's ironic that he shot Romeo and Juliet before Titanic, because it wasn't Romeo and Juliet that catapulted him to fame, even though it's a fantastic rendering of that play, I think. I love Baz Luhrmann. But it was Titanic that, nothing was ever the same again.
Oh, he did a couple of other famous movies, not as famous as Titanic.
Yes. And then he there was no indication to me on the set of Titanic that Leonardo DiCaprio was going to go on and do Wolf of Wall Street or The Revenant or any of those films. He was a bit of a brat. He was young. He was what I observed with a lot of young, male, handsome actors. A lot of the work he did came easily to him. So he was having a laugh. And Kate, who knew subconsciously in her world there were fewer roles, and she, from a very young age, I imagine, and as part of her personality, was very dedicated, and she had a script with all, in the 3-ring binder with all the notes on the script, and he was just there. And there's Eric Holland, who plays Olaf Dahl. He's sadly passed away, but he wrote a diary for us. And he plays the dad of the young Scandinavian girl that kind of has a romance with Danny Nucci, with Fabrizio's character. That never really gets you never really get to see that, but that was a subplot in the script. And he overheard Jim say to Leo one day, "Oh yeah, Leo, you're one of those actors." It goes, my line, blah, 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 my line, blah, my line, blah, my line, blah, 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 my line. Which was to say, you're not taking notice of what the other character, you're just learning your line, waiting for your cue and saying it. And he didn't always know what the blah, blah, blah was for his cue or what his line was. He was just young. He was young. And then years and years later, I went and saw The Revenant, which I think is a masterpiece in cinema making. I saw it 3 times in the cinema. I had an opportunity to go through, through BAFTA. And I was like, how did that kid turn into this Oscar-winning actor? Because I couldn't have predicted it. I think he's an extraordinary actor, and has a quality about him which is a little bit I don't give him, which a lot of actors take themselves so seriously. Oh my God, it's such a pain in the neck. So seriously, when actually I think some of the superpower of the better actors is they just play a really good version of themselves. We know about that, George Clooney, all of the classic actors, John Wayne, Clark Gable, they were just playing slightly heightened versions of themselves.
In 1997, you voiced Governor Elaine Marley for the first time, setting the gold standard for how Elaine should sound after we, original Monkey Island fans, had been voicing her in our heads for the first 2 games, which weren't originally voiced.
Yes.
Now, I'd like us to go over the audition packet that was used when LucasArts was still looking for a voice actor for the game. So let me share it with you.
Okay.
So this is the audition packet. And as you can see here, this is Elaine Marley. And it says, our poor heroine, caught in the middle of a love triangle, she's tough and much more competent than Guybrush. Her only shortcoming is falling for him, which gets her cursed. When Guybrush puts the cursed ring on her finger, she turns into a golden statue. Voice should be tough but attractive. She has to sound like someone that Guybrush would fall for, but not so sweet that she's a pushover. Possibly British accent. In her late 20s. American accent is also okay. With the examples of Emma Thompson, Carrie Fisher, and Kirstie Alley.
They wanted a spunky one.
So it seems that they were looking for a woman with a British accent for the role. And your voice was apparently the perfect blend of Emma Thompson, Carrie Fisher, and Kirstie Alley. Do you remember receiving that packet?
I don't. They call them breakdowns. That like the breakdown of the character is there, and they will send you that. And also, sometimes you get a drawing, you get a rendering of the character because she's changed many times over the years, hasn't she? Mm-hmm. So you'll get to. But I've let my silver take over now. But I was a feisty redhead back in the day, and I was really charmed to see that she was this little redheaded pirate, I don't remember seeing that, but now that I read it, I think that's pretty much what I did.
Yeah, spot on.
They didn't, and sometimes they'll have an idea for a character and then somebody comes in that's quite different and they're like, oh, scrap the breakdown, let's go with this. But it looks like I fit the remit. I fit the part quite well.
And Dara O'Farrell, whom I interviewed a few months ago, was the one who interviewed you for the role.
Yes.
What can you share about the interview process?
Well, the interview process is more going back to auditioning is 90% of your job. You know, you do a lot of auditions, and you literally get back in the car afterwards and you get on with your life. You know, it's always lovely a week or 2 weeks later to be invited to actually do the job. So a lot of them feel very similar, especially voiceover roles. And it was unusual that I got to meet Dara, because sometimes you would just go into your agent who had a sound booth in the office there and just lay down a few of the lines that they picked out for you and then do that. But to meet Dara, he was like, oh, it's going to be like this, and this is the character, and this is how it goes. But to remember the specifics, I don't remember the specifics. I don't. I know I would have read from the script, and he might have asked me to try it this way or try it that way, because in his mind, he knew what they were looking for.
Because you should have written a diary, just like the one you've written in.
I should have written a diary.
The Monkey Island Diaries.
Aren't we glad that I did for Titanic? Aren't we glad I got people to do that? Now you don't have to ask people to remember. When you get old, you can't remember things 25 years ago, for goodness sake.
Now, in The Curse of Monkey Island, you also voiced another character. Do you remember which one?
Oh, a little boy, was it?
Exactly. You voiced the Sun Pirate, who was supposed to appear in the main game, but ended up only appearing in the post-credit scene.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, they'll do that, won't they? They'll get a woman to do a little boy, but you can always kind of hear it's a woman trying to be a little boy.
So this is the storyboard they shared with you.
Father and Son Pirate.
And
but it's just like a couple of lines. It's not really a character, is it?
Yeah. It's a character for us, Monkey Island fans.
Sorry. Yes.
and this is the concept art for the character. This was supposed to be the Sun Pirate.
Oh, okay. Kid. That's hilarious.
And I also have the script over here, which is these two lines. So you had the finale, and then you had the Sun Pirate saying, "This carnival is great, Dad." And then you're supposed to say, "Ooh."
Ooh. Yeah, like 2 lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
now, do you also know, I'm sure you've interviewed enough actors now to know that we never meet anybody when we do these jobs.
I know, and we're going to talk about it.
Okay, all right.
And here's the scene as it appears in the final game.
This carnival is great, Dad.
It sure is, son. But you know, rumor has it that the man who built this place is buried here. And they say that to this day, his frozen body remains in the tunnels somewhere beneath the amusement park.
So as you probably noticed, 1 line out of your 2 lines was cut from the final version.
The horror.
However, I found the original recording, and here's what it sounded like.
This carnival is great, Dad.
It sure is, son. But you know, rumor has it that the man who built this place is buried here.
Oh.
And they say that to this day, his frozen body remains in the tunnels somewhere beneath the amusement park.
Yeah, that's hilarious. It doesn't even sound like me.
No.
That doesn't even sound like me.
You have such a range that
I do. I kind of freak people out who don't really know I'm an actress anymore, because I can, and I get into trouble as well, because some people don't like their accents reflected back on them. Or nowadays, you know, it's really interesting being English in America. People find it absolutely fine to go, spot of tea, tip, pip, pip, cheerio, here, or do a really bad Cockney accent. I'm not Cockney, but, they think. But if I try and do somebody else's accent, which I'm rather good at, I'm fascinated by the way people speak and their pronunciation of words and so forth. Get me into I can see people prickle sometimes. They're like, oh. Or it might not be me doing their accent, but somebody else's accent, and now we can't make humor out of the way somebody pronounced. But that's part of the fun of it.
We can't make humor, period.
No. Drew and I have a character that we only do at home in the kitchen when we're cooking, because you just can't. We'll get caught out one day and we'll do it, and somebody's going to bonk us over the head or something. And then we have what I call the Home Depot accent. Home Depot is like a big box store here where you go get your timber and your electrical things and plumbing couplings and things like that. And we find ourselves talking like we're from Texas every time we go over there, because we need a hammer or a power tool or something. That's our Home Depot voice.
Okay, now let's do the entire conversation with you using this accent.
No, can't keep it up. No, I can't. But we do it like he's a builder and a contractor, so the accent and the conversation comes up a lot. And he's American. He's not got an accent like that. He's got a regular American accent.
You should do a British accent, and you should do an American one.
Well, he's getting quite good at Cockney. All right, you do like that then. Cockneys, English people, when you ask them a question, they answer it with another question, don't they? Where are you going? I'm going to the shops, aren't I? Are you? Yeah. Well, it was when I was back at school, wasn't it? What was it? Everything is always a little question.
Well, as a British actress who does an amazing American accent, I have to ask you why they keep casting British actors to play American roles by doing an American accent that's so good, that's believable, while American actors can do a British accent.
I don't know. I have a theory that our training program, we start in theatre. There are now drama schools which just teach film and television. I don't understand why you would bypass a theatre education or experience, but everyone wants a fast track, right? And you can learn anything on YouTube now. But if you're talking about actors like Benedict Cumberbatch or Tom Hiddleston, Eddie Redmayne, Kate Winslet, although Kate did not have a theatre background, they're just good. They're just good. And they have, and that's not to put down or disparage American actors at all, because I think there are some amazing American actors that are completely watchable. I think it's up to the director or the producers who they choose.
Wait,
and then
that are completely watchable is a compliment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And also, I think people love to know that there's another layer of acting in there. They don't know they know that, but that's like a subconscious. Oh my gosh, you're not really American. Was it
Hugh Laurie in House?
Hugh Laurie, yes, Hugh Laurie in House. I knew him he had a sketch comedy series with Stephen Fry for years on television in the UK, and Blackadder. He's hilarious in the Blackadder comedy series. So we all knew he was English. And then when, he made a huge impact in House, and people were like, what? What? Ah, ha, ha, ha. You see? It's called acting.
And he does an amazing American accent.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why every time he would attend an award show, people wouldn't realize that he's actually British when he would, host an award or something.
Yeah. Well, I encourage people to look up Blackadder because he is bloody hilarious in that series with Rowan Atkinson. Stephen Fry plays characters in it. And really good. Really good.
Now, Titanic was released about a month after The Curse of Monkey Island was released. The Curse of Monkey Island was released at the end of October 1997, and Titanic was released in December of that year. And I bet you felt like you were the queen of the world Did you?
I will tell you, they gave me a copy of the CD-ROM, which was how you received computer games in those days.
You have the big box.
Yeah, and I don't know where it's somewhere in storage. And I put it into my computer, and I barely got off the first island. And then, because I've been turned into a statue, and I had to play the whole game to get to the end and unstatue myself, I gave up. I was rubbish at it. I was rubbish. And Dara didn't call up and go, let me show you how to play the game. No, I was terrible. Even if I had the CD-ROM now, I'd have nothing to play it on, right?
No, you can play it online.
Oh.
If you ever want to play one of the Monkey Island games in the live stream, let me know. We'll play the entire game. I'll play it for you. You just have to watch the game.
Okay, but I would like to learn. I'd have liked to have learned how to pick up, you had to pick up all the little tools and the things and get to the next place. I just kept going round and round in circles, and my patience is just not, I just don't have enough patience, unfortunately.
Well, Return to Monkey Island is a lot easier than the previous games. If you want, we can play that one. Yeah. Don't have too many options.
How long does it take to get through the game, though?
2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
If you know what you're doing.
And you still go back and you play and you make the same choices because you're like, oh, I remember this bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So did you attend the premiere of the movie? You told me that you saw an early screening, but did you attend the actual premiere?
No, I didn't. No. Some people did. Some people sort of wangled their way a ticket to the premiere, but I don't even remember where I was. I might have been working I don't remember. No, I do remember Oscars. Everyone came to my house and watched the Oscars. That was fun. And then some of them did have tickets to go to the Vanity Fair after Oscar party, and some people snuck in. I was not brave enough to sneak in. Plus, I had a partner at the time who was kind of a little bit, Hollywood and everything. It's all a bit much. And he couldn't wait for everyone to leave the house after the Oscars telecast. And so I was not encouraged or supported to go and crash the Vanity Fair party. But they all stood in line, and the security guy would be like, you're the guy. And he was just letting everybody in because they had the balls to show up. And I was like, oh, well, I missed out on that.
Well, luckily for you, Titanic was part of the 1998 Academy Awards, which I think was the best Academy Awards ceremony up until that point and since then. So I still consider the 1980.
Because of Billy Crystal and his reenactments at the beginning. They're always fun.
In general, it was fun. I remember waking up. It was broadcasted live over here. And I woke up at like 5 a.m. to watch the entire thing. It was awesome.
That's fantastic.
And you mentioned that you watched an early screening of Titanic like a week before. Did it include any of the deleted scenes, or was it just the theatrical cut as we all know it?
Yeah, it was theatrical cut.
And James Cameron is no stranger to releasing director's cut, like you said. So do you think we'll ever see a director's cut of Titanic, maybe for the 30th anniversary in 2027?
I think he would have done it by now. I think the 25-year anniversary, he was knee deep in Avatar. And he may be in the 30th anniversary as well. I don't know. I don't know. I have often said, though, now that we're used to our streaming platforms and our binge watching series, that he shot hours and hours and hours of film and bypassed many of the true stories because he was concentrating on that thread of Jack and Rose. But if he was pitching this story now, he would make it a 10-episode or seasons, like The Crown. If you look at The Crown, how in-depth that multiple biography television series, which is quite brilliant. Their budget was something like $10 million an episode, which for television is, prior to unheard of. So if he was doing that now, I think he would have made a long-running series over 3 nights. But he could have gone down all of those cul-de-sacs of all of those characters, whether you have the fictional characters of Jack and Rose or not. He could have been much more in depth, but as it is, he just has a 3 hour and 30 of something minutes movie.
Yeah, but
So
there are tons of deleted scenes that he could incorporate into the movie.
a young man I met in London called Nick Peel, he did that. He put them all in. And they had a screening. My friend Peter White, who you'll know from the podcast, he was completely cut from the film. He played the wireless operator of the Californian, which was 10 miles away, and they cut that scene or those scenes. He said, "Oh, there's this bloke at Spotlight, which is like our casting center in London. He's a huge Titanic fan, and he's put back in all the deleted scenes. Do you want to come and watch it?" I was like, "No, I didn't go. I didn't want to watch it. Maybe I'll ask Nick to send me a copy of it because I think it would be interesting." But also, oftentimes when you watch deleted scenes, you understand why they were deleted. You do. You watched the film the first time, you loved it, you didn't miss having that scene, and then when you go, "Oh, but there's this one scene I put in there," don't need it, didn't need it.
Why? Because of the pacing of the movie? It ruins the pacing?
Yes. And for directors and writers, they call it killing your babies, killing your darlings. You have to, this brilliant scene, or this scene, cost however many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands to shoot. Gone. But you shoot it because at the time you might need it or you might want it. And it just doesn't serve the story. If it doesn't serve the story, the power and the discipline of the filmmaker to go, "All right, then we're going to cut it," is an extraordinary thing because it's very hard to do.
Yeah, but you're part of these deleted scenes. Don't you want to see yourself in a bigger role in the...
I've seen them. Listen, I have been dining out on these stories for a long time. And even Peter has, even though he's not in the final scene, in the final film, he is, in a collection of deleted scenes. You can see him, doing his two scenes, his two lines or whatever. I still had those experiences, and my ego about that stuff has been left long in the past. And in fact, now people are like, "Oh, you're going to be in your film. Like, you're an actor, you're writing, you're the director. Now you can put yourself in the movie." I was like, "No, thank you." I did not want to be in Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries. I thought, I know I wrote a diary. I know I got everyone to write their diaries, but this is a documentary, and this is less and less true now, but documentary filmmakers are supposed to be the eye of the audience. You're not supposed to, imprint or suggest anything as the filmmakers, even though they do. And Elizabeth Ng Wong is my producer, and she knows documentary. And she's the one that said, "Yes, I understand that you might want to just be," she said, "but in this case, there would be no film, there'd be no story, there'd be no diaries if you hadn't written a diary and you hadn't got 28 other people to write a diary and you weren't a filmmaker now in a position to tell that story. So I had to be in it, and I have voiceover." We were maybe going to ask Kathy Bates to do voiceover. No, it's my voiceover because actually it's my story. And we're putting together a book proposal, and Elizabeth's the same thing. You, Alexandra, write the book, and then we'll slot in the diaries, because in this instance, it's my foresight. It wasn't foresight. It was in the moment. We tried to get those diaries published in 1998, and the ship had literally sailed. Nobody, we pitched to a couple of publishers. No, Titanic, that's so 1997. That's so 18 months ago, right? And I just got on with my life and my career. And then it was 2 or 3 years ago, I was walking around my forest going, "Oh, there's a 25-year anniversary." And I spoke to Nick, my producer. He said, "We'll put a budget together." I'm rubbish at budgets, but I gave it a good guess, and started writing an outline that incorporated these diaries, these memories, these movie memories of, not just mine. You've just heard my memories of being in the first class dining room, but I wasn't on the poop deck, but I've got 3 people who were, got 3 actors who give you their first person account of being on that very scary poop deck as it was tipping to 90 degrees, the 90-degree club and so forth. And so here we are. I don't want to be in that'll be the first and last of my own films I'll be in, for sure.
Now, I want to show you my Titanic Collector's Edition.
Yeah.
You know it? It comes with all the photos from...
Little photo. Oh, that's nice. I like those squares. Yeah.
Various photos.
Yeah, very well known.
A piece of film. Get an actual piece of film.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's like 5 frames of Jack sitting next to Rose. So each one of these collector's edition has a different piece of the film.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Is the 25-year anniversary one? Yeah.
No, that's the VHS tape.
That's it's the one. VHS.
Yeah, that's the one I got.
They were doing that. They were giving away bits of celluloid before they thought it would be worth something to collectors.
It is. It's from 1998. It's the collector's edition. It's worth beautiful. At least $5.
Because you have to find a VHS player now. God.
I bet it felt amazing that James Cameron told you that, well done. That's just what I wanted, especially from a director that strives for perfection, like Jim.
But can I tell you, that's also why he cast me. In generic terms, as a director now, you hire somebody who can do the job for you. And he would have seen that. This is not me tooting my own horn. I'm using my audition as an example, but in general terms, he said to the casting director, I'd auditioned for the Countess of Roths, but they had already given that to Rochelle. And he saw my tape and he was like, oh, get Alexandra another role, because he could see through my research, my delivery of a monologue, my English accent. Let's go through them. My curly red pre-Raphaelite hair that I had put up into a sort of quasi-Edwardian hairdo, my demeanor and my manner, my theatrical training, all of that stuff stood out in a sea of maybe American actresses. He went, if I cast that actor, I can put them on my set and not have to go, this is how you hold yourself. This is what because I had already demonstrated. He'd already done half the job by casting me in the first place. Does that make sense? So when he said, thank you so much, that's exactly what I wanted, he already knew that. I'm getting a bit emotional, but that's the collaboration between actor and director and the whole auditioning process and all of that. Another role I might not have been quite so right for, but he cast somebody else for that role. You see what I'm saying?
And he did it all in one take?
I think it was one, maybe 2. I mean, they probably did a second. They usually do a second one for safety.
Well done, Alexandra.
What I love is, though, that people think I wink, and I don't. I just go,
You don't wink.
Don't wink. But on the inside, that's the other thing, too. I'm a very straight-laced Edwardian lady going, oh, hello, bit of rough trade, right? But it's all on the inside. It's all on the inside. And that was the job.
You're smizing. You're smiling with your eyes.
Yes.
And raising your eyebrow.
Well, here's the thing too. It's like layers of storytelling and filmmaking. That moment for that character, she is highlighting the fact that they've all been on the ship a couple of days now. This is really deep diving. They've all been on the ship. When you go on a cruise, you keep bumping into the same people. Oh, good day to you, sir. Oh, I saw you at breakfast. Oh, we're going into dinner now. What's this one? He's a new one. Where's he been? He's giving a tiny moment for that, my character to represent all of First Class going, where's he been? Where's he come from? And that's what you get. That's what it is. And he probably didn't even realize. Did he go, oh, I've given that woman, Alexandra, a First Class woman role. What am I going to have her do? What would be the point of hiring me? And I bet you he had a little note that said, this frame coming through First Class into the First Class dining room, I'll put a woman there. Oh, Alexandra, that woman who did all the research and all that stuff. She's just got to give him a bit of a double take because he's new. He's different. On all those layers, Molly Brown giving him the suit and Kate, explaining who all the major characters were, John Jacob Astor and Guggenheim and everybody and all the little gossipy backstory. That's just another nano layer of story there that you don't even notice until we sit here and do our PhD breakdown of every frame of that damn movie, like Titanic scene by scene, my lovely friends. Brittany and Ethan, that's what they do, And
was it weird for you to look directly at the camera?
No, because I knew that was his. And again, that's Jack's POV. Oh, there's that. Oh my God, he's experiencing the First Class dining room for the first time, like we had the day before or whatever. And no, it wasn't weird.
Because I always wondered, because actors are so good at looking at everything apart from directly at the camera. So whenever you're on set and you have to look directly at the camera, I always thought that it would feel very wrong for the actor to do so.
It's the other way around. The camera's like a magnet. You cannot take your eye off it. And child actors love to look at the camera. I've directed kids now. I'm like, the first thing I say to them is like, do not look at the camera. It's really hard.
Place a doll next to the lens. Tell them to look at the doll.
Maybe look at the doll, but also the doll on the right side of the lens for the point of view of the actor, or you'll have the actor off camera to the side. No, I knew that. And I'm sure, I don't remember this now, but Jim would have said, look straight at the camera because that's Jack's POV, which we're shooting. They'd have shot his POV looking at me. And yeah, you do get my POV because all three of them walk through the door. So it starts with them all three walking through the door. That's my POV, which I didn't have to be in that shot. And then they turn around on me and I'll have understood that I'm watching all three of them walk through the door with the, haven't seen anything like that in First Class before.
What do you think of the alternate ending in which the crew sees Rose throw the heart of the ocean into the ocean?
Oh, it's silly. No, everyone agrees it's a ridiculous thing. And stop, don't do it. No, it's ridiculous. It
surprised me that it was he actually filmed that scene.
Yeah, but again, they probably tested it. They probably filmed it to test it. The other thing is, it only took me until very recently to realize, because my friend in England, when he was interviewing me on his radio show, he said, if that was my Nana, I'd have shoved her in after it, wouldn't you? Like, how dare you? My entire inheritance. But now they know where it is. And he could just go down in his submersible, get it, pick it up, bring it up again. Which is that's that. It always bothered me till literally about 6 weeks ago. Wait a minute, now he knows exactly where it is. And of course, if there's a burgeoning love story going on between him and the granddaughter, she's going to be like, would you go and get down and get my inheritance, please? Grandma's dead. She'll never know. She's off with Jack in her memory, in her heaven scene. Would you go and get the heart of the ocean, please? I'd like it.
Exactly. If they can get the submersible into the Titanic and find the location and try to find it, now they know the exact location. But it seems like they gave up entirely in that scene. Like, no worries, it's fine.
Yeah, I think people are much more bothered by the fact that she held on to it all those years when she could have bought a mansion and set herself up and made a film studio. She didn't have to be a struggling actress riding, astride on the beach at Santa Monica, and she could have. Anyway, she didn't. She followed her heart. That's an unbelievable part of the story for me, that somebody wouldn't have that, even if it was in your retirement, you said, or even, you would. I see people friends of mine not spending money they've saved because they want their children to have it. I'm like, well, let them get a job. You don't have to. There was a Sony camcorder ad a long time ago now. It's this lovely silver-haired gentleman, and you see him all getting suited up in astronaut costume, and he's going up in a rocket to float weightlessly, and he takes the Sony camera and he's filming himself like this, all weightless in the pod above the earth, and he's looking back at the earth. And the caption was, "When your children ask you where their inheritance is, show them the video." And I'm like, yes. Can't take it with you.
I remember watching the movie during a vacation we had in Romania back in early 1998. And that's when I found out that tickets in Romania are priced according to the length of the movie. So we paid double for the tickets.
Because it took twice as long to watch it.
Yeah, because I presume that the cinema wants to make a certain amount of money at the end of the month. And since the movie is longer, then you have less screenings per day.
That's why they like a 90-minute movie. 100 minutes. That's your limit. And then they can get one lot out and bring the next lot in.
Exactly. In the year 2000, you voiced the ferry shuttle pilot and Aurelian civilian in Star Wars Force Commander. What do you remember about the production of this game?
Well, that was Dara cast me again in that one. And I don't remember anything about it at all. I do remember auditioning to match Natalie Portman's voice for a game. Because, they want those characters in the game, but they don't want to hire Natalie Portman. That's what I remember. And I had to sign this NDA that I wasn't going to, share. This is way before social media. I don't know who I was going to tell. I don't know how I was going to leak anything, because it was probably alongside the release of the movie. So I got to listen to her saying a few lines, and then I imitated her or did an impersonation or an impression of her, but I didn't get the job. That's the only one I remember around that. Yes. I have done the same thing for Emma Thompson, who is quite emphatic when she talks. And, that sort of, that's just who she is. And, I can listen to the way somebody speaks. And if you give me the lines that they're supposed to say, I'm probably quite good at it. No, she's very emphatic.
So maybe you sounded too much alike.
I don't know. No, they wanted it to sound like it was her. But maybe somebody else did it better. Who knows?
Nobody does better than you, Alexandra.
Here we go. And here we are. We can get onto that, though, because I'll tell you why I didn't do the last Monkey Island.
We'll get to that.
Nah.
Speaking of Monkey Island games you were not part of, in the year 2000, Escape from Monkey Island was released, and as if the 3D graphics weren't enough to disappoint classic Monkey Island fans, your absence from the game was also quite disappointing. Now,
I think they just got lazy. I think they just forgot to call me and they just found somebody else.
Now, I understand that they didn't even approach you,
Nope.
And they just recast Elaine as if it was nothing. How soon after the release of the game did you find out that they released a new Monkey Island game without you?
I don't know. And listen, I didn't expect to get the next game. I know that there are voice actors that's all they do. They do voices for games, big games. They make a lot of money doing it. I was like, oh, that's a shame. Why didn't they call me? But when they called me in for the third one, I was like, oh, hello. And I don't know if it's because they got pushback from the fans. I doubt it. I think Dara probably went, no, I've still got her number. I still know who her agent is. Let's get her back. But it was weird. And it's still weird to talk about it because why didn't they? There was no explanation. I think it's just laziness.
Well, I'm going to solve this mystery for you today because I defend your honor on this channel. So I actually got the project lead of Escape from Monkey Island and asked him exactly that. In Escape, Elaine has an American accent for the first and only time in the series. And why didn't you use the original voice actress for Elaine in this game?
I go back and I can't even remember why we made that decision. Beats the living daylights out of me, man. In hindsight, it makes not much sense.
In hindsight, it doesn't make any sense. Yep.
I don't think a decision was made at all. It's interesting that they chose all the other same actors. All the others, Dominic,
Guybrush, yeah,
and all those people, they're all the same. Don't know.
I don't know. That game was weird in general, so it's a good thing.
Maybe it was a new team, and it wasn't as cohesive as the last two or three. I don't know. I'm not enough. I don't live enough in that world, which is quite specific in the entertainment industry to know. And even he was stumped. You see his face when you ask, because he must get asked all the time. Oh, God, here we go.
Because I listened to all of his previous interviews and nobody asked him that. So that's why I did.
Okay, well.
I defended your honor, Alexandra. And that's the most important thing.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And revoicing a game is not that unheard of. Even in the Monkey Island series, in Tales of Monkey Island, which we're going to talk about later, they used a different voice actor for LeChuck in the first episode. And then when they got Earl Bowen for later episodes, they revoiced the first episode and released it as an update. So in case they ever remaster Escape from Monkey Island, would you be willing to revoice Elaine Marley?
I'm pausing because I don't think so. And it would be for the same reason I didn't do the last episode, where I don't know if you know, but voice actors and game actors are on strike right now. And it's because we are never involved in the share of profits of games. Can you imagine how much money Monkey Island, as an example, has made over the 25 years, right? Millions and millions and millions. They don't even have to print a CD anymore. It's all downloadable with a bit of artwork, right? And I did go back and revoice. When I had moved back to London, I had done 2 or 3 episodes, and then we went back to the original 2-dimensional ones and put those voices in, and I did a few sessions of that. And you get paid an hourly rate, right? And because you're just laying down your lines, it doesn't take you as long as it takes to play the game to record those lines. They condense it all into an hour or 2 hours, depending on how big your role is. And you do each line about 3 times, 3 different ways. I do it 3 times fast or just 3 times in a row, so they can pick, when they're putting it all together with all the other performances. And it's a really fun job. And it's what I call money for old rope. You don't have to put your makeup on. You don't have to learn lines. You go in, you do your job. So there had been a big gap between doing those revoicing jobs in London. And then a couple of years ago, they asked me to do the new latest one that, we're in our 50s, we're grown up, we've been married a long time, and it was fun. And less than a year later, again, cloak and dagger, I have to sign the NDA and all that stuff. Who am I going to tell? I sign it. I'm fine with it. We have another job for you. And it turns out it was another Monkey Island. It was a collaboration, I think. But again, I didn't know enough about it to know why. And I was like, why is this money the same as it was last time? Oh, well, we've got a locked budget and that's what everyone else is getting paid. I said, I don't care about the other actors. I do not have an agent anymore to advocate for me. So I'm advocating for myself. Also, P.S., I'm practically retired now. To come and work for you, I have to get on a ferry, go to a studio, spend a couple of hours, come back. I said, you're taking time out of my day when I do other things now. Plus, do I not get some kind of compensation for having created a character and played it for over the last, not constantly over the last 20 years, but if you want my voice, I would like to be compensated for that. I would like this amount of money. And this was not an outrageous amount of money. It was an amount of money that is a tiny pinprick of a drop in the ocean for the amount of money they have made over the years on Monkey Island from fans. Nobody was considering, just like in the second episode, when they don't know why they cast an American actress instead of calling me, when all the fans knew, all the fans noticed, here we are again. I would like this amount of money to inconvenience myself to come and work for you and not make another penny afterwards. And they went, no, we can't do it. But if you'd like to come in on Wednesday, I said, I can't go back now and work for 2 times scale plus 10 after I've requested some money that is almost commensurate with my 40-year acting career and creating this character. You're willing to just dispense with all of that and disrespect me as an actor for the sake of a few $1,000s. And so I said no. Did you know that?
I did.
And I say it, there might be young aspiring voice actors here. There might be very well established voiceover actors here. There might be huge Monkey Island fans, which I'm sure listening here. It was not about the money, even though it was about the money. It was about the level of respect that actors are not given at my level. And not a penny. I still get a residual check from Titanic if it's played in, somewhere in the world. I'll get like a couple of $100. I am still on the payroll. I have never been on the payroll for Monkey Island. I probably could have over the years paid a mortgage if I had been properly compensated in the same way. But the union is at fault also. The union hasn't until now negotiated actors' percentage of residuals, especially in games, because they make so much money and their overheads are so much lower than a movie of any description. And I just stuck to my guns. And my friend who's, we talked about it, he said, actors have done it to themselves. Actors tap dance, when the door to the fridge opens, it's a light on, I'm performing, desperate to be chosen, desperate to be asked back again. Oh, I have to behave in such and such. I have to acquiesce because if I misbehave, I'll never get hired again. But I don't care about getting hired again. Sorry, Monkey Island fans. I don't care. I have back to full circle. I have other creative interests now. I'm a writer. I'm a director. You are inconveniencing me. I am doing you the favor, not you, the fans. You, LucasArts, and it's not LucasArts anymore. It's another company who've taken over. I am doing you the favor to inconvenience myself to come and add once again to your highly successful game that it would not even be a dent in your profit margin to pay me something more than you were offering. And I get quite emotional about it because it's, nobody cares. Nobody cares about the actors and nobody cares about the fans. I found this out dealing with Disney and my film. They wanted some of the actors' interviews. And I said, but the fans in my film too. Look at the fans. The fans are the ones that repeatedly buy tickets to go and watch your film in cinemas. They repeatedly buy the box sets and just would do anything to be part of this. Not really interested in that. It's astonishing to me. Who do they think pays their wages? So then my second thought was, once I sort of drew a line under my decision that I'd made, and I was like, oh my God, this is only a year ago, just over a year ago. I bet you they've got enough Monkey Island, Elaine Marley recordings. They can just AI my voice. And there's nothing that, again, that's what they're fighting for in the strike. There's nothing to stop them doing that and not paying anybody except the engineer who input the lines, make this sound like Alexandra Boyd playing Governor Elaine Marley.
Well, it all depends on the original contract. Did you allow them in the original contract to use the...
No, because there was nothing in a contract that said one day we're going to have AI that can almost sound for sound, beat for beat, replicate your voice. But I don't believe they did. They did hire. But guess what? They
did hire someone else.
They would have had to hire a casting director and and listen to a bunch of actors. And so they still spent more than just what they would have hired me for. Maybe they only paid her scale. Mine was 2 times scale. Woo-hoo. It didn't matter enough to them after 20 years and after the number of interviews and the people who love and appreciate this game and still play this game. It did not matter.
That game
How does that make you feel?
Makes me feel like crap. First of all, I haven't played that game because I don't consider it an official Monkey Island game. I was pissed when they announced it because I found out that, first of all, they didn't approach you, but they didn't even approach Ron Gilbert, who wrote the series, and a year prior to that created Return to Monkey Island, because this isn't an official Monkey Island game. It's an expansion pack to a different game altogether. If it would have been an official LucasArts release, then they would have to rethink their position because they might want to rehire you for future entries. But in this case, it's just an expansion pack. They did the expansion pack, and that's it.
But they know that if they ask me back, like I said, I couldn't go back. They were like, look, this is the offer, is the original offer, 2 times scale plus 10. They know they won't come back to me because they won't have at least the money I asked for. They won't want to do that.
Yeah, but it will be a different company altogether.
There was another actress who I know, actually. Her name is Helena Schmid, but she goes by something else. She did a similar thing where she'd only done like 2 games, and she went on Twitter and said, I just asked for what I thought I was worth.
I remember.
Yes. And actually, I think she overstepped the mark a little bit. That's sort of, my opinion, that she sort of lent into it a little bit too much, to say, I should have been paid. She should have been paid. But in the end, they just hired somebody else with an English accent, So it happens across the board. And I doubt very much if there's another iteration of Monkey Island, if they will ask me again. If they do, I will ask for the same money again. I will. And like I said, it was not an outrageous amount of money. It really wasn't. It was just more than they were offering.
But again, if there'll ever be another Monkey Island game, it won't be that company, because the company you are dealing with at the moment is the one that created the Sea of Thieves game, which the Monkey Island part was an expansion pack of. But any other Monkey Island release would be either a Terrible Toy Box, which is Ron Gilbert's company, or a LucasArts game. So we're good.
Yes, and I'm sure maybe they would have had to pay Ron Gilbert something just for the use of his characters. But no. Oh, he said no?
No, I know that they didn't because Monkey
But see,
Island.
this is all wrong. This is all wrong. Yeah, because he doesn't own his own story because he wrote it under their umbrella. Yeah, it's wrong. Wrong.
So
wrong.
even The Curse of Monkey Island was written without Ron's involvement. Or Tales or Escape. For years, people have been asking Disney to give Ron the rights to create a new Monkey Island game because he said years ago, like 2 decades ago, he said that he'd return to the franchise only when he gets the rights back to the franchise because he didn't want it owned by another company. But in this instance, with Return to Monkey Island, they reached an agreement which gave him the creative freedom to create the game he wanted to create without, vetoing any parts of it. So that's why Return to Monkey Island got made.
It's a shame because, actors make, unless you are, a big movie star, actors nowadays are barely paying their rent. They all have other jobs. It's very hard to be an actor. It's as hard as being an independent filmmaker, and like I said, I'm at a point in my life and in my career where if it's not challenging, if it's not interesting enough, if there's not enough money for me to leave my lovely forest, it has to be a really sexy offer. Otherwise, I'm going to be occupying my time in other creative pursuits. And that, in my 30s and 40s and early 50s, that would not have been the case. I would have been happy for a couple of $1,000s. And even Drew's like, what do you mean? That's like $1,000 an hour. No, it's not $1,000 an hour. It's my whole day. I can't accomplish anything else in that day. Coupled with a 35, 40-year career. I'm not just pulling it out of my arse. I am using years and years of training and experience to show up and make something that many, many people would not be able to do look easy and go fast and be like this. And James Cameron, yes, that's exactly what I wanted. Thank you. Because he cast the right person. And they cast the right person 20 odd years ago. But they can just, as Drew says, good enough for who it's for. Is that how we want it? Is it perfect? No. Is it better than it was before? Yeah. Is it good enough for who it's for? Yeah. It's this little joke of, unless it's for us, it's good enough for who I made it for. That's what they think. It's good enough.
They think they're paying you for your time, but they're actually paying you for your experience, which costs more.
There was an actor strike in the noughties, and it went on for a commercial actor strike, and I was making my livelihood as a TV commercial actress at the time. These casting directors were stopping at bus stops, looking at women with pushchairs, going, "Hey, do you want to come in and audition for this mom role in this, in this TV commercial?" Because all the professional actors were out on strike. And people were bringing their dogs and people were bringing their kids. There was no discipline. It was a nightmare because actors are focused. They know that the job is the job and they've been training most of their lives. Or if not, they know that it's a job to be done. It can't just literally pick people off the streets. But that's what they thought they could do. And, I gave up. I stopped acting in London when there were a couple of jobs I was offered. One was an understudy of a play happening in the West End. It started off, can you understudy the main character? Oh, but would you also learn the supporting female character? Oh, and then there's this couple of other sort of walk-on roles as well. They wanted me to know the whole play in case the lead actress got a cold, whatever, and couldn't go on. And the money was something like £350 a week before tax, before I paid my agent. Oyster card, my travel in and out of the city, I'd have ended up with like, I don't know, 50 quid a week for sitting there hoping and praying the lead actress wasn't going to collapse and I'd have to go on in the second half. Oh, darling, let's see if we can get you to go home after the interval, because once she's on, she'll make it to the end. No, I had to stay there till a curtain. And then another job was Amanda in The Glass Menagerie. Tennessee Williams, huge role. The most fantastic role for an actress in her 50s. Jessica Lange had played it on Broadway and in the West End. This wasn't a Broadway show or a West End show. This was some little bijou rep company out of town a little bit. And it was going to be only 2 weeks rehearsal, 9 performances, great production values. I was like, wait a minute. I have to do Tennessee Williams. I have to put that together in 2 and a bit weeks. No. I mean, they practically called me. I was still on the bus going home after the audition. They're like, you've got the job. And I slept on it. And I was like, I can't, to my agent, I can't do, oh, darling, can we not be going for these auditions if we're not going to take them? I said, well, I wanted to meet the director and see what the job actually was. But when I sat there at the kitchen table, trying my housemate, she's a acting coach. She said, we'll work on it before you get to rehearsal. We'll go through. I said, why should you give me your time, your highly skilled coaching time, and me, when neither of us are on the payroll, so that I can be kind of up to speed or ahead of the game on the first day of rehearsal? You know what my agent said? This is what did it for me. Oh, darling, don't worry about the acting. Nobody's going to see it anyway. Why don't you just do it and it'll go on your CV and it'll look really good? I was like, why don't we just put it on my CV or my resume anyway? Because nobody will have seen it. They offered me the job and nobody will have known if I took it or not. I can just say I did it. Don't worry about the acting. Nobody will see it anyway.
That was your agent. Jeez.
Tennessee Williams in 2 and a bit weeks. Every play has a sort of natural gestation period. If you're lucky, you'll get 3.5, and your last week is tech, and then you'll get previews, where the audience knows you're still sort of working out the kinks. So by the time you get a press night, you really feel good. I would have got 2.5 weeks and 9 shows, and by the time I closed, would have been the time frame to open it. But it would have been done with, and nobody would have seen it. I was like, I cried for a week. And I had been on a big TV show. I was famous for a tiny bit on Coronation Street, which is a big primetime ongoing drama. It's a soap, but a lot of people, 1 in 6 people watch this show in the UK. So I was recognized. I had a bit of kudos. I had a bit of, casting power being requested. And you have a limited amount of time once that job finishes to use that momentum for whatever the next thing or things are going to be. And that momentum left. I was being offered understudy in the West End to end up with nothing in my pocket except the stress of an entire play with little to no rehearsal, praying the lead actress wouldn't fall over and hurt herself. Or Tennessee Williams, Glass Menagerie, 9 performances. Great production values. And that was sort of dovetailed with me starting to write. I was being asked to direct things. I had directed a short film, and I just didn't want to do both. I wanted to redirect everything towards making my first feature film, which ended up being Widow's Walk.
So they broke your spirit out of acting.
Broke me. Yes, they did. Yes. But I was also kind of done. If I had really wanted to keep acting, or if that was my only potential income stream, I'd have stuck at it. But I was being drawn to this directing and writing thing. So it was, it was a combination of that. I can't, all my career, on many levels, I've not quite had the opportunities that I felt I wanted, that I could get my teeth stuck into, that would give me an opportunity to, even the soap, I was on it for just enough time to really get my character going. And then they wrote out the actor playing my husband. So I was sort of actually there to write him out to take him off the show. But they weren't very honest with me that's why they'd hired me. So I thought I was there for quite a long time. And I read in the newspaper that my character was leaving the show.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
The next day on set was probably very awkward.
Yeah, it was. And I called the producer on it too. I said, why did I have to read it? I've been asking for 3 weeks if I'm leaving with Jack. Oh, yeah, really sorry. Yeah, but I said, it was bad enough asking and not getting a return call from you. And now to read it in a tabloid newspaper, it was.
How did they pick up the story? How did they know?
Oh, because they have the press department at the show telling them, yeah, we're having a bit of a shake-up. And there were a bunch of actors leaving the show, but most of them knew. So, and I advised a friend who was a journalist, said, well, just write back to that journalist who wrote that article and say, I'm going to have to keep reading your column, because that's how I'm going to find out what I'm doing next. Because I was about to do a John Travolta film. I had got this small role in a movie, From Paris with Love. And he said, just put in, hey, and by the way, I'm going to do a John Travolta film. So not who cares? I totally cared, because I could have shot that John Travolta film in one weekend, which is what I did. And the tabloid journalist published it. And the producers were really, awkward the next day was all the cast going, did you write to the journalist and let him? I said, yep. I said, I was, you don't do that. You can't be making it look like you're difficult to them upstairs. I said, I've been fired. I've got nothing to lose. And my other friend, who's a journalist, you should have come to me. I used to work for, Soap magazine. They'll never hire you again. I said, they hired me less than a year later on another similar show. Their memories are very short. They're very short. And people's jobs turn over. So what happened was I auditioned for another sort of one-off special episode of a sister soap opera called Emmerdale. And I got that one. Nobody remembered that I had unceremoniously been let go from Coronation Street, except me. That's how actors are treated. And because we have made the rod for our own backs, because we will do anything to get a job, to be chosen. We want to be chosen, please.
Now, I understand that you never met Dominic Armato in voice recordings for any of the games. Was it because you recorded in different studios because the schedule didn't allow, or was it just not required?
Never required. It was probably always in the same studio in the Valley, when I was in Los Angeles. But Dominic lives in Arizona or somewhere. Do you know where he lives? He's not even in LA anymore. So nowadays, and then when I moved back to London, it didn't matter at all. They would just hire a studio in London and patch me through to wherever they were in San Francisco at that point. And they would this is way before Zoom and Skype and everything. They would patch me in through satellite, and I would just go in and do the lines. There's never, ever in any game I've done have I been in a booth with another actor. That's just how they do it. And that's, like I said, that's why I always suggest I'll do the line 3 different ways, 3 different inflections, 3 different speeds or whatever. So they can, and they love that. Then they can match it with the other actors.
And given the fact that you don't interact with anyone in the scene, how do you keep the natural flow of the conversation going?
I don't know.
Tell us the secret.
It's down to understanding the sentence or the context. It is very odd. It's a very odd way to do it, but that's how it's always been done in my experience.
I mean, it's not just keeping the natural flow of the conversation. You actually have chemistry with Guybrush, and you're not in the same room with that person.
And think about it, the first time I recorded it, I'd never heard his voice. I didn't know what he was like. I just put down my lines. You know, I've been given a very clear breakdown of what she's like, and, you know, and the lines reflect that. Where's your wedding ring, Guybrush? You know, and all of those sort of like slightly petulant lines. And you can tell he's a bit of a. I guess I have that in the back of my mind. And sometimes you'll know what the previous line is that you're responding to, but sometimes you don't. Most of the times you don't. I don't know. I have no answer for you other than sheer luck, talent, and experience.
You're doing an amazing job as Elaine. Now, when you record the lines for a recurring character like Elaine, do you try to follow the overall plot of the game?
You can try, but you don't get the whole game. NDAs, and it's all it's all top secret. So oftentimes, or most times, as much as I remember, I just got my lines, and then sometimes they'd be like, okay, what's happening here in the scene is, and they'll sort of build it up for you. They'll show you they'll tell you what's going on, where you are location wise, what's just happened, because sometimes it'll be odd and you'll need context. So they'll, one of the 3 or 4 directors or the writer will fill you in. You go, oh, okay. So I have to respond to that situation.
But during your time as Elaine, there had been big gaps between the games themselves. But I've noticed a pattern. You were Elaine in Curse, which was released in 1997. And 12 years after that, you were Elaine in Tales and the special editions, which were in 2009 and 2010. And 12 years after that, you were Elaine in Return. So the question is, will you be up for playing Elaine 12 years after Return, which would make it 2034?
How old will I be then? I'll be a little old lady. I'll be
in the late 20s.
Late 20s. Yeah, I mean, I'll be halfway through my 60s then. Yeah, and what I was impressed by, what this last one, was that they didn't want us to pick up where we left off 12 years. They made us an older married couple, even though Guybrush was still, a man-child. There was a maturity to the writing. That was smart, because all of you have grown up too. You're not in your 9, 11-year-old brains. I think that's nice, rather than hermetically seal us in our 20s or however old we were supposed to be when we first got going.
Now, in 2023, you worked on your documentary movie, Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries. And, I've been really looking forward to seeing your documentary. And the moment you sent me the link earlier this week, it was around 1 a.m. over here. So I stayed up and watched the whole thing from beginning to end. And I feel like I could sit down and watch another 8 hours of people talking about the production of Titanic. And thankfully, people can do just that with your podcast, Titanic Talk, which I've also been listening to this entire week. So what can you tell me about both of these amazing projects that you haven't said so far in the conversation?
That I haven't said so far. I'm very proud, and my producer Elizabeth Ing Wong, who is the she's the documentary producer that's been literally my wingman woman this whole time. She was very clear that she wanted to support a female filmmaker and a female voice. She was the one that persuaded me to be in the film. And also together, we agreed that it was really important to give voice to people who are not asked for their stories. Because personal stories are very powerful. And I work for a company called narrative.com, and it's all about origin stories and, you know, in business and so forth, and branding, but not just branding and pitching, but like, this is who I am today because of something that happened to me. And I'm going to tell you. And it's so much more powerful than a news article or even a junket interview. Nobody had asked these actors to tell us about their experience, and it was coupled with the diaries and so forth. And what you get, and what my long-term dream for the film is, that this film is screened in every filmmaking university program and every drama school, because filmmakers need to understand, you know, you can watch all the James Cameron, Paramount, Fox behind the scenes stuff, but this delves deeper into the personal experience of those actors. Myself, what was it like being told by James Cameron? That's exactly what I wanted. But what did I go through to get to that point? And now 26 years later, I'm still telling you about the experience. Most actors that graduate from drama school or get going now, they are going to be actors like us. There's a very tiny amount that become movie stars, and everybody knows their stories, and they're all over tabloids, all over social media. Nobody asks the supporting actors. Nobody asks them about their process. Look at all their processes, each one, especially the people who got to play real characters, the research. Even myself, I auditioned for a real character. So by the time I got there and I was playing another first-class passenger, my work was practically done. Bar the corset and the costume and the set and everything else. Nobody talks about that process for supporting character actors. And think about how many speaking roles are in Titanic. There's something like 250 speaking roles in that film. You know, it's not that everybody got to speak like myself, but consider all those people in the corridors and running through the frame, all behind Kate and Leo, or, you know, Billy Zane or Francis Fisher. There'd be no movie if those actors hadn't got up that morning, walked into hair and makeup, walked into wardrobe, and sat around on that set for 12 hours waiting to work and do some extraordinary things. I mean, two of my favorite storytellers are the two core extras who were there, Judy and Ellen. They were there longer than any of us from day one. They weren't stunt performers, but they had to jump off one of their stories, and it's in Judy's full diary. Their audition was jumping into a swimming pool to see if they were afraid of jumping off the diving board and going into the water, because Simon Crane, the stunt coordinator, knew that he was going to have to put these everyday people from San Diego into these situations dotted around his trained stunt performers, but he knew he couldn't have as many stunt performers as there were extras. The stories go on and on. Honestly, my film is the tip of the iceberg, because we interviewed everybody for 2 hours at least. That was their allotted call time. So we're cherry picking the moments.
Don't cherry pick, just release the entire thing, all the interviews.
Well, we could probably do that eventually, maybe in a few years' time. And before we know it, the 30-year anniversary will be around, and we'll be re-releasing something, just in the way Titanic, behind the scenes. Yeah, we can go back and find more stories. But, it's not quite happening yet, but I am in the process of looking for a publisher to publish them, because I don't know what to do with these diaries, Daniel, where they're all in my computer. what am I going to do with this anecdotal, personal, first-person stories about being on that extraordinary film?
Well, why not stream them on Disney Plus?
Do you have Disney's telephone number?
No, but I know a few people at Disney, so you want me to approach them?
Maybe. I think what I could do is in a very analog, low budget, no budget way is get everybody to read their diaries, record them, and make a long series of podcasts. Some people aren't alive anymore, though. Somebody would have to read for them. So I've been approaching everybody like, do you want to be included in a book version? But if the book gets published, we could then do an audio book, but it would be full versions. I mean, Amy Guyper's is like 28, 30 pages long. Peter White's is 3 pages long, so there's lots of stories in there, untold stories.
I want to hear each and every story you're able to record or, extract from their diaries. I'm willing to watch a 3-season, 10-episode series of 5-hour interviews each. That's probably a few hundred.
Yes, and you're not. What I know about my Titaniacs, what I know about the Titanic community is that that's exactly what people want. They eat it up with a spoon. They're voraciously looking for anything new, and I do have all of that. I just, we need a new budget to start that again.
So we're out there. You should either use a crowdfunding campaign to fund the entire thing or to distribute it yourself. We have to, it's great. And after watching it, I watched it again the day after. And I always, when I listen to interviews, most of the interviews online are 1-hour interviews or such. When I listen to interviews, I always want to hear the 4-hour version of that interview.
Yeah. And they do that now, don't they? They do it on NPR here, which is a radio station I listen to in the car. They'll do a little sort of 7-minute version, and then I'll go, if you want to hear the full interview, we have a podcast page on our web. You can do that now. I could certainly take all the audio recordings, but again, you talked about editing your show and making it as professional sounding as possible. It takes time. So, yes, I can certainly revisit that. And like I said, we're only a couple of years away from the 30-year anniversary, and we do have all that material. So.
It's interesting that we follow similar pursuits when it comes to the people we interview. I mean, you didn't go and interview James Cameron about Titanic, which is something we've seen countless times and probably won't reveal any new information. Instead, you choose to hear the personal experiences of people who were part of the production and had small roles. And that's exactly how you get to hear the stories that have never been told. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I mean, I can talk to the writer of a certain game, but I want to talk to the animator who did that 1-second animation in that one scene that nobody remembers. That's a far more interesting story for me to hear.
Yes. And I think for, the film industry or storytelling or the way we still tell stories, the backstories are so interesting and educational as well. That's why I keep talking about my film is not just for Titanic fans. It's for film fans. We talked about it a bit earlier, they're not making movies like that anymore. They're not making them in that same way, and they haven't for many, many years. So to go back, and I always say I liken us to the Munchkins in The Wizard of Oz. If we have accounts of their experiences, but we don't. But we do have the Munchkins in Titanic because we were all there as supporting characters that, the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. Or, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts because there were so many of us. We all had similar to same experiences, but from our own points of view. And if you don't ask people what their experiences were, they pass away and it's too late. Like I said, I have 3 or 4 actors who I have the actor who plays the pub keeper. Titanic leaves in 15 minutes. That's Shay Duffin. He's passed away. Elsa Raven, who played the Mrs. Strauss, and Lou Poulter, who played Mr. Strauss, and then Eric Holland, who played the father played Olaf Dahl. And all of those actors are no longer with us, but we have their diaries.
Just don't use AI to read their diaries.
No, we'll cast an age-appropriate character actor to do that for sure. Yeah.
Before we conclude our conversation, one final question from me. What are your plans for 2025, and how can people stay in touch with you and your work?
Oh, thank you. Well, it looks like Ship of Dreams Titanic Movie Diaries will get released in 2025. So I imagine there'll be quite a bit of promotion that I'll be doing that. I'm writing something with a friend who has a really great idea for a detective character. She's in the UK. I'm here. She's not a screenwriter, but she's got the idea. So I'm formulating it into a TV pilot for her. I do that. I've done that more than once now. I run I run 2 Airbnbs here in the Pacific Northwest. It's one of my other things that I do that's not the thing I do to balance out my creativity. And I have 3 dogs, which is a lot of work. And I don't want to use the word retirement because I don't really understand the concept of not working and just sort of being on vacation for the rest of your life. Number one, I don't have enough retirement money to do that. But number 2, I'm really interested in different things. So somebody might come along and say, would you write this for me like Enola has, or can you rewrite this script? It needs a bit of a rewrite. I've done that for people before. I don't have any directing plans. Directing is very hard. And as a woman, it's in this industry, as much as we're being given more opportunity now, the reality is it's still a very male-dominated world. And I feel like I've made 2 feature films and a bunch of short films when most people barely make 1 film. Like, I've done a lot more than I expected to in the 13 years or so I've been directing. So maybe I'm going to take a bit of a step back. But I'll tell you, the minute I do that, the minute I take my foot off the gas, something comes in.
Disney calls.
And I'm sucked back in to the fray, to the trenches, to the bombs going over. And how are we going to solve this problem? Alexandra, you're the woman for us. We want to hire you to do this. Okay.
Well, hopefully Disney will call soon for the publishing of your movie and for the next Monkey Island game.
You never know, see? Until I'm 6 feet under, nailed down in a coffin, anything could happen.
Well, Alexandra, thank you so much for taking the time to join me for this conversation. It's been great talking to you today.
Oh, thank you, Daniel. You're a great interviewer. You've done, like I said, amazing research because my memory is not what it used to be. And I love talking about this stuff. I don't know if you could tell.